Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu to our viewers and listeners. This is study number 26 of the Ramadan Daily Quran studies for the year 2020. I am Zahid Aziz and I'm delivering these for the Ahmadiyya Anjuman Ishat Islam Lahore, UK. Today's study is number 5 in the discussion of the doctrine of abrogation or nasakh. A most dangerous and damaging consequence of the doctrine of abrogation is that those verses of the Quran which teach Muslims tolerance and to have harmonious relations with non-Muslims, and verses which show Islam to be a peaceful religion, such verses are declared by many Muslim religious scholars as abrogated, allegedly by some later revelation. And this is how the concept of a violent jihad arose among Muslims. The concept of Muslims being constantly, continuously at war with non-Muslims. That wrong concept. In this connection, we may take as an example the English translation of the Quran officially published by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It is entitled The Noble Quran, and the translation is by Doctors Al-Hilali and Dr. Muhammad Mohsen Khan. Now, the Quran contains the following verse: Wadda kathirum min ahlil kitabe la yaruddunakum min ba'di imanikum kufara hasadam min indi anfusihim min ba'di ma tabayyana lahumul haqqu fafu wasfahu hatta yatayallahu bi amrihi inna allaha ala kulli shay'in qadir, which translates as, many of the people of the book wish that they could turn you back into disbelievers after you have believed, out of envy from themselves, after truth has become clear to them. But pardon and forgive. Fafu wasfahu. But pardon and forgive till Allah brings about His command. Surely Allah is powerful over all things. Surah Al-Baqarah chapter 2 verse 109. In their translation, they have added a footnote under this verse, and the footnote says, the provision of this verse has been abrogated by 929. Now this verse 929, chapter 9 verse 29, is related to Muslims fighting with the people of the book, Christians in particular, and this was revealed near the end of the Holy Prophet's life. It is thought, quite wrongly, that the words till Allah brings about His command in this verse, the verse which I recited above, till Allah brings about His command, mean that pardon and forgive is meant only till a certain time, because it says, but pardon and forgive those people of the book, but pardon and forgive till Allah brings about His command. And that is a wrong interpretation, that they are pardon and forgive is meant only till Allah brings about His command, which I will explain later on. Now, before showing the error of that view, we would like to point out that while this verse mentions the people of the book, Jews and Christians only, it also applies to the mushrikeen, what are known as mushrikeen, the idolaters of Arabia as well. The Holy Prophet Muhammad's, in other words, own kith and kin and tribes people, who were not people of the book. Now it is quite obvious that since those mushrikeen, the idolaters, also wanted to turn Muslims back into disbelievers, that is quite obvious that they also wanted that. In fact, they wanted it even more than the people of the book, because if Muslims did turn back, they would then again join those idol worshippers and become like them. Also, just before this verse, in verse 105, the idolaters, the mushrikeen, are mentioned alongside people of the book in having bad wishes for the Muslims. That verse translates as, verse 105, neither those who disbelieve from among the people of the book, nor the idolaters, like that any good should be sent down to you from your Lord. So this verse 109, which only mentions people of the book as acting against Muslims, it includes the idolaters as well, because they have been mentioned previously. Now there is a hadith in Bukhari, in its book on commentary of the Quran, in fact hadith number 4566, which mentions this verse 109, and alongside it, it mentions the following verse as well, which is about the people of the book and the idolaters. And I'll only read that out in translation. That verse is in chapter 3, verse 186, and it says, addressing Muslims, you will certainly be tried in your property and your persons. لَتُبْلَوُنَّ فِي أَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ. And you will certainly hear from those who have been given the book before you and from the idolaters much abuse. Azan kasira, much abuse. And if you are patient, وَإِن تَصْبِرُوا, and if you are patient and keep your duty, surely this is a matter of great resolution. It's a matter requiring great determination. Now that hadith in Bukhari that I mentioned refers to both these verses, and it says in this connection, and I quote it, the Messenger of Allah and his companions used to forgive the idolaters and the followers of previous books as Allah had commanded them, and they used to show patience on hearing hurtful words. So that is what that hadith says initially. Of course, that is not a hadith in the sense of being a saying of the Holy Prophet, but it is related by a companion, that the Messenger of Allah and his companions used to forgive the idolaters and the followers of previous books. And the same statement then goes on to say in Bukhari, the Prophet used to adhere to forgiveness as Allah had commanded him to do, until Allah gave permission to fight regarding them. So the Messenger of Allah fought them at Badr, and through him Allah killed the leaders of the disbelieving Quraysh. That statement continues in this way in Bukhari. Now, this does not, and it cannot mean that the command to forgive was cancelled when permission was given to Muslims to fight the enemies, the permission which led to the Battle of Badr. As you all know, after being victorious in that battle, Muslims took no revenge on the Quraysh prisoners whom they had captured, and in fact they treated them very well. And there is one incident. One of those captured was a well-known man, opponent of the Holy Prophet, whose name was Suhail ibn Amr. And this man was quite skilled in oratory and making speeches. And he used to employ this talent in making speeches against the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And fighting against the Muslims, he was captured by them, taken prisoner at the Battle of Badr. Hazrat Umar Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu suggested to the Holy Prophet ﷺ that Sohail's teeth should be pulled out so that he would never be able to exercise his oratory against you. This is what Hazrat Umar said, so that he would never be able to exercise his oratory against you with his teeth missing. The Holy Prophet rejected this without any hesitation and said, "Certainly not. I will not mutilate anyone, because God would mutilate me even though I am his prophet." And this is recorded in the famous Sirat Rasulullah of Ibn Hisham and Ibn Ishaq, which in fact has been translated into English by an Orientalist called Alfred Guillaume. And that translation has been available since the 1950s. And also, as is well known, later on when the Holy Prophet ﷺ and his followers conquered Makkah and held their enemies in their power, the Holy Prophet forgave his bitterest enemies and the enemies of Islam. And an Orientalist of the 1800s, who was a most hostile critic of Islam, but certainly a very knowledgeable scholar of Islam, Sir William Muir, who wrote a book in English called The Life of Muhammad that ran into several editions. That hostile critic says this about the conquest of Makkah: "The magnanimity with which Muhammad treated a people who had so long hated and rejected him is worthy of all admiration. It was indeed for his own interest to forgive the past and cast into oblivion its slights and injuries, but this did not lessen the large and generous heart required for this forgiveness. Muhammad is said to have compared himself in his treatment of Makkah to Joseph forgiving the injuries of his brethren." So this completely refutes the idea that the forgiving and pardoning of verse 109 of chapter 2 was only meant temporarily until the command came from Allah permitting Muslims to fight their enemies. And the command which came first in regard to the idolaters in chapter 2 verse 190, and then in regard to the people of the book in chapter 9 verse 29. So the command to forgive was not cancelled by the command which came later to fight the idolaters. That command to fight the idolaters came in verse 190, while the command to forgive was in verse 109. And the command to fight the people of the book came, as we've said, in chapter 9, verse 29. These commands did not cancel the earlier command to pardon and forgive, because they relate to completely different things. So what is the meaning of the words in verse 109? But pardon and forgive till Allah brings about his command. The meaning, as far as I can see, is that when by the command of Allah, Islam is triumphant in the land, then the desire of the opponents of Islam to turn you back into disbelievers after you have believed will be no threat at all to Muslims. So many people will have embraced Islam, including former opponents who used to try to make Muslims leave Islam. so many people will have embraced Islam, that there will be no one trying to turn back Muslims into unbelievers. And if any such opponent did still exist, his efforts should not bother Muslims at all in view of the triumph of Islam. So that is, I think, what is meant by till Allah brings about His command, that the situation won't exist where those people are doing something for which you need to pardon and forgive them. Because no one will be trying to turn back Muslims into disbelief. And in fact, the Holy Quran itself says elsewhere, فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ قُضِيَ بِالْحَقِّ وَخَسَرَ هُنَالِكَ الْمُبْتِلُونَ. So when Allah's command comes, judgment is given with truth, and those who treated it as a lie, they are lost. Chapter 40, verse 78. And that is the end of study number 26. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quranil Azim wa nafa'na wa iyyakum bil ayati wal zikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun kareemun malakun barrur raufur rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.